Well, and good afternoon. It is a beautiful Sunday afternoon, evening, tea time here at Camelot Castle. And who should have popped in for tea but our dear friend Piers Corbyn, who of course will be known to so many of our friends out there and so many of the great freedom fighters. I think it is not an underestimate to say that in the annals of freedom fighters, you go down in history as one of the most persistent freedom lovers and freedom fighters is the right word, that this country has ever...
But it depends on you, really, people, in the end.
It does.
It does.
It does. Now, we've got a special programme today because there is one thing that we are very, very excited about. And I'm just going to put up on the screen here something. And this is the stock price of the Digital World Acquisition Core. And you can see that the stock last week went absolutely through the roof. Now, you may say, what has this got to do with any of us? And you may have a point, but let me tell you what that is. That is the Special Purpose Acquisition Vehicle, which is a stock exchange company that is used to acquire various different properties in the field of media. And that is the company that people are investing in. Why? Because they own the new Truth Social, which is the new Trump free speech social media platform. Now, the whole purpose of us doing the broadcast in the first place here from Camelot Castle was because we saw that free speech was under assault. And as you know, my wife and I have been very good friends with the First Family. We've done whatever we could to help him win the 2016 election. We did whatever we could do to help him win the 2020 election. However, where he has come under assault was from the social media companies. And initially, one could communicate quite freely about President Trump. But of course, we've seen him being banned from Twitter and from Facebook. And although he is suing those companies right now, and one does have to make a stand against people that treat one badly, as we're going to talk about a little bit later. But the fact of the matter is he has now launched something. And if you follow the action on Reddit right now, a lot of people are just investing in this company simply because they want President Trump to become the richest man in the world. Now, what do you make of all of this, and what do you think? Free speech.
Well, look, the crucial thing about this, of course, is free speech. And we, in the movement against lockdowns and so forth, are constantly vilified, and our accounts by various social media operations have been taken down, or they're censored or controlled or whatever. And I've been arrested personally 13 times. In
13 times
13
now?
times, yeah.
And did they lock you up and put you in jail? Or what did they do?
Well, I was held in police custody for, up to 24 hours on each occasion. And most of the cases haven't yet come to court, or some have been dropped. And, the most severe sentence I've had so far has been a conditional discharge. But there's another half dozen or so to come up. And the last one was arrested under a terrorism charge for running in the London Marathon wearing this T-shirt. Of
if
course,
you could just stand up a little bit, because I want everybody to see the message.
There you are.
Resist, do not comply. Let the UK live. Now that to me...
.com is our... letuk.com would be is our website, for example.
Right.
But yes, I went with two other friends, part of our campaign, and just joined the last mile of the marathon and got arrested. And the policeman just barged in.
To run a marathon at the age of 74. You're a young fellow, but you're 74.
74, but I identify
very young 74.
I identify as 47.
Very good. Well, in these days of identity politics,
of course,
far from it being me to contradict you.
But so, he got stopped by the police. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "You're not allowed here. You haven't been registered." I said, "Well, indeed, but lots of people run the last mile because And the cop said, "No, Mr. Corbyn, this is terrorism." I said, "What?" He said, "Terrorism." And it's an ATRO order which applies. An ATRO is the Anti-Terrorist Traffic Regulation Order, number 36. And traffic is vehicles or people. and they apply around political party conferences and at the London Marathon. So they were just using it as an excuse to prevent us going over the finishing line, getting on the BBC, wearing this sort of T-shirt. So
really,
well,
I mean, it is.
And they haven't yet charged us. They said that was the charge, but they dropped the charge and said, "Oh, it's under investigation, Mr. Corbyn." The police know it's all sent from on high, and quite frankly, I think the coppers concerned are not impressed by what they've been asked to do.
Most coppers are
and it's under investigation, Mr. Corbyn. Now, they could come back, but as it is, it's most likely they'll drop it.
So free speech, and what will it mean to our movement to have a genuinely uncensored free speech social media platform?
Fantastically
what would that mean
important
for us all?
Because, for example, I was on Twitter, 40,000 followers off. Lots of other operations have removed me or they censor us, and this goes for all the, I would say everyone who's very active in the movement is getting trouble with the so-called, they are social media, the social media giants. They are the new controllers of what's deemed to be truth. Now, obviously there are little channels which try and break through. There's what you're doing. There's UK Column. There's Resistance GB. Stuff like that. But they're not making a breakthrough. Now we need somebody somewhere that can make a breakthrough. And if Donald Trump can make a breakthrough and get really out there, that is fantastic. That will be a massive step forward for free speech, which is crucial to us winning our movement against all the nonsense propaganda which they promote on many fronts.
Well, this is what we're talking about, and this is the whole buzz at Camelot today. I myself, and listen, please don't get me wrong, I'm not recommending anybody on here to buy stock. The stock has already gone up a lot, and as anybody knows, any money that you put into any stock, you have to be willing to lose that money. This is a speculation, it's a punt. I have a reputation of being a bit of a punter, but you know what? We're joined here today. Look at this, who's watching. Amanda Jane Eliash. That's
okay.
Johan Eliash's.
Okay.
She championed the entire head fortune. She is London's favourite billionaireess.
Wow.
Now, Amanda, are you going to be buying this stock? This is what I want to know, because if Amanda's buying, that means that this stock is hot. Digital World Acquisition Core. And okay, let's say our friends at the Sun, Boris Johnson actually watches Camelot Castle.
Does he?
He does. He does.
Boris, well, I've got some things to say later on about what you...
We're getting to you in a second, Boris. We're getting to you in a second, Boris.
Yes.
And listen, free speech, uncensored free speech. Frankly, our government here should have done a lot more to prevent censorship. I'd like to know, has anybody out there been censored? Write it in the comments. Have you been censored? I'd be interested to know, wouldn't you, Piers?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, there may or may not be legal actions you can take if you're censored, but the important thing is to carry on and get your message out.
Amanda is buying, look at that.
You can. Yes.
I think that means that Amanda Eliash is going to be buying this stock. God help the New York Stock Exchange, is all I can say. Amanda, the only thing is I don't know if it's going to be able to take your volumes. When Amanda goes into the market, she of course is the opinion formula to a lot of people. Yes, she lost Twitter. Oh no, she didn't say that's not an answer to whether or not she's going to be buying the stock. Yes, she was censored from Twitter. So she understands. So and please understand, we're not recommending any stock here to anybody. It just is exciting that Donald Trump looks as if he is about to become the world's richest tech billionaire as a result of launching. I think he's going to beat Facebook. I think he's going to beat Twitter. But let's see what happens. Amanda got censored. So Amanda, will you be joining Truth Social? Have you signed up for Truth Social? Now, of course, Piers, the subject of sort of information, which I do want to get onto a second, but is there a message you'd like to give to Donald Trump? So if let's say our journalists at the Sun are watching this.
Yes.
What would you like to say to Donald Trump about his new social media network, and are you behind it, and are you behind the idea?
Look, go for it. Absolutely, and I support you 100% on this. Now, there's many political things I may or may not agree with you on, but this is fundamental to the future, frankly, of freedom in the world, of successful businesses and successful incomes, because we know what the new normal, new world order are up to, and it is really evil, and they are cracking down on free speech everywhere. And if you can break through, people will go with you to break through.
Well, this is fantastic. And look, Amanda Jane Eliash has signed up. You know, she and Johan Eliash have done a tremendous amount. They've saved huge tracts of the Amazon.
Yeah.
They're great people. Dick Turnip says, Dick, is that a real name? Trump will be the first trillionaire. Why not? And you know what? If we can all make Trump a bit richer, what a great thing. So how exciting. But there is a subject that I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak about. Okay. And I don't think you've been given the opportunity to talk about this properly. But I think you were the victim of I don't know what we call this, a scam. You were certainly misreported.
Absolutely, totally misreported.
And I feel embarrassed sort of dredging this up with you, but I know that you haven't had the opportunity to...
No.
To
yeah,
talk.
sometimes I want to talk about it, sometimes I don't, because you have to go into a bit to explain what really happened. Yes, you're referring, of course, to the appearance of a video by those pranksters, what their names are, whatever, but anyway, it doesn't matter, those two pranksters who pranked other people, but of course I wouldn't call it a prank, it's malevolence, actually, to make them look the opposite to what they are. Now, in this case, what it was about, trying to portray me as taking money to support a vax company. Now, that's the opposite to what happened, completely opposite. But the way they worked it was, they wrote me an email to stopnewnormal.net. Not our political party, letlondonlive.com, but stopnewnormal.net, right? And said, all right, this is one of them, said, represent a rich man who wants to support what you're doing in Stop New Normal, because they agreed with everything you're doing. Would you come to a private meeting where we can give money privately? We don't want anything public. Okay. So we wrote back and said yes. Now, I was advised, well, Piers, yeah, maybe best to go by yourself. And though I was against that at first. And they said, well, look, they'll probably talk to you because they do want you alone. Okay, so went there, and what it was, they were filmed in Sloane Square. Well, filmed, I didn't know they'd been filmed, but retrospectively, there were cameras around in Sloane Square filming this discussion, right? So I said, first thing I said, well, okay, where's this money coming from? He said, oh, we own a restaurant chain in South Africa. I said, yeah, well, that's okay. Great, I said. And then conversation, and they say, oh, and also we have some income from a vax company where we have shares, and we feel guilty about that, so we want to give it to you. And I burst out laughing, frankly, but, you know, and said, well, okay, so they were being Robin Hoods, you see. I said, well, okay, I mean, it's a bit strange, I thought, but I said, all right, okay, because we desperately need money for leaflets and travelling and whatever. That's all right. But that piece was not in.
By the way, if there's anybody out there that is feeling guilty about having shares in vaccine companies, by all means do send it to me. Because no problem.
That piece of where I said that piece of with the Robin Hoodness was left out completely. Yeah. And then later on in the discussion, because they talked about other things, what did you do in Imperial College? How do you know Sloane Square? You know, stuff like that. They said. Would you like to make more campaigning against magnetic vaxes? And by that they meant other than whichever one they were promoting at other than AstraZeneca. So it was Pfizer and Moderna, right? I said, well, lots of people are. Some people are already heavily campaigning against those, so that's done. But you give us money, we will campaign against all of them, because we oppose all of what these companies are doing. Said, and we'll publish leaflets like this one, which was against, you know, anyway, we showed them an example of a leaflet. And they said, yes, well, but, or whatever. But I said, look, that's us. We don't accept any conditions on donations. But anyway, that was all left out of the film. They also left out, it was Photoshop. They sort of showed a picture of what was purported to be me holding some money, but it wasn't. It was a Photoshopped image of me holding money, like I had this thing in front of me of me with my hand on it. But the image behind was just plain yellow, not the T-shirt. So you could see clearly, if you looked at it, it was a Photoshop. There was 45 minutes of filming, reduced to 45 seconds of my comments, of very heavy over commentary, and it had been cut 37 times because we got some experts in Resistance GB.
So they'd edited
massively.
your footage.
Massively.
So number one, the meeting went on for about 2 hours or something.
Yeah, 45 minutes.
45 minutes,
Yeah.
right? Then they edited that down into a short little clip.
Yeah.
Right. And misrepresented, basically.
They
altered
misrepresented
the concept of what it was.
Sure, they put the opposite there to what I actually said. And of course, we are taking legal action. We've had some very generous free legal advice from top lawyers on this. We've sent them letters demanding full footage of what they did there. They're refusing that, demanding apologies. We're still undergoing these arguments, but that's what's going on. We also sent the same things to Google because they own YouTube, which is continuing to broadcast this defamation.
Right, and they haven't
responded.
Taken that down.
Yeah, but we're not giving up. We're pressing on with this.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you've got. I can't obviously comment on it one way or the other, but I just feel. You see, here's the point, Piers.
Other people are attacked as well. It's not just me.
Yeah, if you hadn't been censored, I mean, you're pretty thick-skinned about this whole thing, and it's probably water off a duck's back. But I know it must have been distressing at the time.
It was, yeah.
And here's the thing: is that it's all very well. But you've been censored on
and they
Twitter.
never gave me the money, by the way, in the end. I wasn't given the money.
Oh, really?
They waved around some money and then gave me, put it in my bag, a packet, which was Monopoly money.
So you never actually received anything?
No, I never received anything. No. Well,
so
Monopoly money must have a value, I suppose, of 5p. I don't know.
Right. So basically it was totally a setup.
Totally set up.
And you see, my point is this. This is all well and good, but you should have the right to reply. And when people censor you on social media,
that's right.
And this is why I go back.
We've asked the right reply. Nobody's we've put up our responses and videos, but
but if you've been removed from Twitter,
that's right,
and you've been removed from social media,
YouTube should give us right of reply, but they haven't come back and said, what do you say? Who you are? Who's the space? No.
And I think what we have to remember is that all of these companies, these social media companies, these are privately owned companies, which is why, going back to what we're excited about, is the launch of Truth Social, which is very, very exciting, because that would, in this situation, have given you the opportunity to answer back.
I'd be interviewed and I could go straight away the next day about, like we've just done now, but this is sometime later.
This is sometimes later. So, a lie has gone halfway around the world, and, of course, the BBC were delighted to broadcast it. Did the BBC give you a go on it?
There were mentions on numbers of mainstream media, including that, yes.
Yeah.
Where I had no right to reply. They just ignored me.
See, Patricia Wolf says it's horrible to be set up in this way. And this is, I've gotten to, I think you've been to Camelot a few times.
I have indeed, and it's
times.
Fantastic to be here.
And we've gotten to know each other a little bit. And truth be told, we don't agree on everything, but funnily enough, we do agree on quite a bit.
Well, the freedom of speech and assembly is absolutely fundamental to, an accountable, democratic, prosperous future for the United Kingdom and the world.
Absolutely right. So, what brings you to Cornwall? And what would you? I do want to, because we've got this COP 27, isn't it? 26?
COP 26.
COP 26.
Yeah.
What are your views on how climate? Because one of the things that people don't realise is that you are one of the foremost experts on the subject of weather.
Okay.
And if you could just give us your bona fides on the subject of weather. A lot of people, they know you for what they know you for, but they don't know,
Sure.
on the whole. That
Well, on science and weather, I've got a first class degree in physics from Imperial College, physics, and I've studied theoretical physics, superconductivity and solid state physics, and I've got an MSc in astrophysics from Queen Mary College, and studied many aspects of meteorology, and developed a method of long-range weather forecasting, and in fact sell through weatheraction.com long-range weather forecasts. And what we've got to say about this winter is very interesting, for example, but do that later on. And that's my background scientifically, and the reason why I'm here now, or in Cornwall, was because I was invited to a rally for Let Cornwall Live, which is part of Let the UK Live operation. Let Cornwall Live has been going about 6 months, and we had a good rally yesterday in Truro talking about the way forward, what's happening, how to build support, and so forth. And also they were making a little film today in Penzance about what's happening in the movement, produced by Charlie Rainbow, which is quite an exciting little film. See when it comes out, but we acted it out in front of the cathedral in Penzance. Yes, so okay, you want to talk about?
Well, I'd like to talk about because you have a view on climate change. I think you produced quite a good document.
We have little pamphlet here. Now the COP, it means it's the climate change junket that happens every year or so, where they are propagating the idea of man-made climate change and what you have got to do to comply with the so-called threat to the world, which is all complete nonsense. But we produced this pamphlet. I don't know if we hold this up.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold this close to the camera.
Yes.
And you tell me.
Right. It is. It's a scientific peer-reviewed paper produced by me on request of Reading University Debating Journal, and it states clearly in there the argument that man-made climate change does not exist.
And it's a fantastic read.
Yeah.
And it's very, very well argued.
That's
and
I mean, just in one thing, the crucial thing to understand is that carbon dioxide levels historically follow temperature changes, not the other way around. So the idea that CO2 is controlling temperatures is complete nonsense. There's no evidence for it. So that's that. Now, of course, Boris Johnson, who's watching, I hope, knows that
Boris always watches.
Yeah, Boris.
Whenever he has the opportunity,
Look,
Boris and Carrie snuggle up in bed together.
You phone
and
me.
They enjoy watching and snuggling up with Camelot Castle TV.
Well, let's hope. I'm sure they do. He phoned me many times in the past about exactly this issue of climate, probably because he wanted to argue with the nonsense that other politicians in the Tory party were going on. But now he's propagating their message, right, and talking about spending trillions. Now, look, this is a suicide mission. Him wanting to spend masses more public money on electric vehicles or whatever. The purpose of it, of course, is not actually to change climate, because it won't change climate, it won't control climate, but it will control you. It'll put you in line to accept more taxation, to follow all sorts of rules, and it's a religious backup for all the things they're doing in the name of the new normal and the new world order. Because when you argue with them, they always talk about, but it's saving the planet, right? Now, let's get specific about what Boris wants. They want masses more electric vehicles, electric this and electric that, and wind farms, of course. But the scale of what they're talking about requires the rape of Africa, the total rape of the resources of Africa on the metals needed, the special metals needed for these batteries and magnetic things. That's one thing. The other thing is it's going to put energy prices up.
Now, can I just touch on this mining operation in Africa? Because as I understand, cobalt is one of the metals needed, isn't it?
Correct, it is.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but cobalt mining is one of the filthiest and one of the most inhumane mining processes in Africa at the moment. And the abuse of children in the cobalt mines
Yeah.
is off the charts, isn't it?
Of course, off the charts. So, children are going to die as a consequence of this. And, all these green XR people that glue themselves to roads or whatever, they just either don't understand this or don't care. I mean, if you're going to do these things, if Boris wants these great policies, you've got to look at the whole picture. And there's no way anybody in the United Kingdom is going to benefit from this stuff. It's higher energy prices and, of course, as it said, the religious backup for the new normal, which means reduction of living standards and mega corporations taking over small businesses, which as we go forward now are being destroyed, and their shops as well, in every town in the country.
That is extraordinary. Now, I forget what law it is. Is it Boyle's law of conservation of energy or something? Energy can neither be created or destroyed.
Okay,
what
yes,
is that?
yeah. Well, that's the first law of thermodynamics.
First law of thermodynamics. Now, I'm not as well educated as you in physics. I did study physics, but not to the degree that you did. My understanding is that when you turn a light on, that energy just doesn't just come straight out of the wall. No. Something has to be burned or combusted in order to produce the energy that, for instance, is lighting this light behind me here.
Okay. And
just because this particular light doesn't have CO2 emissions, or maybe it does have some, but the coal that was burned or the oil that was burned, correct, or even in the case of wind farms, in order to manufacture a wind farm,
you've got to do a massive amount of smelting metals and so on. All of those things produce CO2. And in terms of, say, an electric car, you've got to have a power station to produce the electricity to charge the batteries. Now, that power station, in general, they are oil or gas or coal powered. So they produce lots of CO2, and they're only 40% efficient in producing electrical energy. Then you put that electrical energy into a battery and you charge it and discharge it. That involves more losses. So, the actual efficiency is very low when it gets to the car. The most efficient way of converting oil or something into energy is the diesel car.
The diesel, that's very efficient. Now, because I remember we used to do experiments at school where we would measure the leakage of energy from one transference, when it goes from one form to another, and you get sort of heat that leaks out of a thing. And I remember we used to do this experiment where we used to have different size of pigs and pour water and see the speed at which they got cold. Do you remember that experiment?
Absolutely.
And,
absolutely.
So energy, when you move it from one form to another, every time you move it, it leaks. There's some leakage in the system, isn't there? So some goes off into the atmosphere, some, and this is what has never made sense to me about the whole eco way of living. Surely the most efficient use of energy is the least number of steps needed to convert that energy into
completely correct. So the diesel or petrol engine is the best way to convert that chemical energy, if you will, in the ground into power. Now, people, but what about the other sorts of pollution, which is a fair question, i.e. the microparticles from diesel or the nitrous oxide, nitrogen dioxide or whatever, sulfates coming off. That's a very important thing, but we do have catalytic converters in vehicles, and Boris, instead of spending all this money on madness, could actually spend money on more efficient catalytic converters, which could mean that diesel cars and vans, because Luton vans are going to go bust, when they do this stuff, make them actually cleaner, and more advances in technology are possible, I've no doubt. So why doesn't he spend money on that? I mean, let's have, he's talking about billions and billions. I mean, let's have 500,000 invested in this question I just mentioned, or 10 million, or $1 billion, I don't know, but it would be better than this stupidity.
See, somebody on here is just asking, they've obviously joined the broadcast late, and they're saying, how about that £10,000 or whatever in cash? I'm not going to put it up on the screen because it's a bit rude, but you have already addressed that in this broadcast.
Yes, to go and run it back.
So run it back, you can see about all of
that.
Sure,
or get directly in touch with us at lettheuklive.com or stopnewnormal.net. There's message systems in there.
Yeah. So basically, going back to the green thing, this is just a tremendously expensive, very badly thought out agenda.
Correct, and I'll be going up to COP26 along with others, where we're saying, look, the best thing you can do about climate change is nothing. There's no such thing as man-made climate change. Climate is always changing. And if people want to know how the specific weather patterns are going to change in the United Kingdom or Europe or the USA in the next few months, they can find us out from weatheraction.com. In terms of general climate issues, we do also have a general predictions about climate, which have been coming true, namely that because of low solar activity, there's going to be a wilder jet stream, and that will mean more contrasting weather systems and overall colder in the northern hemisphere, for example. That is also being borne out. But of course, we can give more information about that. But if people want to really know what's going to happen and we don't have control over it, just look at forecasting. That's much, much cheaper than spending all this mad money.
Well, somebody's pointed out that David Bellamy also had the same
He
viewpoint
did.
that you had,
He
and
did.
you know who else did?
And he was chucked out of the BBC for that, and I knew him well. And, well...
You know who else did? Was Sir Patrick Moore.
Indeed.
Sir Patrick
Indeed.
Moore.
Indeed.
And,
Indeed.
of course, our dear friend Nigel Farage has been very, very strong on this.
Absolutely.
And it's actually quite interesting. I have another friend who was a professor at Harvard, and she did some amazing statistical research at Harvard, and she demonstrated that, in fact, it was the life cycle of the sun that was the monitor of climate principle.
Correct.
The distance of the sun and what's going on with sunspot activity.
Yeah, it's which we
Very
predict in
important.
weatheraction.com. It's lots of theoretical issues behind that which we understand, and which is why we can make our long-range forecasts.
So you're principally using sunspot activity
Yes.
to predict. How do people get your weather forecast?
They go to weatheraction.com, and there you can download a free copy of this scientific paper by myself and by Philip Foster, who's a vicar and also a physicist. Very interesting read, his stuff in there too. Download that free, and if you want to buy forecasts, they're there, and we've just produced the whole winter forecast. And I won't give you the details because I want you to buy it, but I will say that there's going to be a number of extremely cold blasts this winter.
A lot of the very successful farmers in Cornwall use your
They do. We do sell to farmers all over the country, but quite a lot for some reason in southern England. Yes.
I have several friends who I see out and about, and they do buy your forecast. We're seeing some interesting noise coming out of the Sunday papers today. What is, the $64 million question, of course, well, it's not $64 million, it's, several $1 billion worth of loss. Are we going to be locked down again this winter?
Well, the principal campaign issue of the United Front that we're involved in is, of course, no lockdowns, none of these COVID limitations on our rights, and actual support for small and medium businesses instead of their destruction, which is what's happening now. Or not also happening by the side issues, namely the London extension of the emission zone, so-called, that this is going to destroy businesses and will actually increase pollution because vehicles will have to drive further distances around the expanded congestion zone. So it's all crazy. But anyway, are we going to be locked down this winter? Well, we think the government and their so-called advisors, or people who, Bill Gates and others, who are really telling them what to do rather than advising them, let's say. But they do want the lockdown, yes. But I think the feeling of the public now is no. There's no justification whatsoever. Completely none. Even in their own terms, there's no justification.
So you think the British public have really had enough?
They have.
They won't put up with it because you're on the streets every day.
That's right.
You're speaking to people every day.
And the feedback is now much more supportive. I mean, the basic message we have, look, there's no justification for any of these lockdowns in terms of something which statistically, well, whether it's a virus or not, whatever it is, but it's no more killing no more people than the flu. And you know, the undertakers have been very clear about that and said, look, stop it. Stop all these things.
Well, you know, I have a good friend who owns most of the undertaking facilities in the southwest. And I said to you, Christ, you must have had a bumper crop. You know, the Milky Bars are on you this year. And I said, you must have had... He said, John, we're not even in the top 5 of deaths. No. For 2020.
No, because
2021.
It's just a labelling thing.
He said, you get surges, you know, it'll go into a town and you'll get a surge. Mm-hmm. And then, but he said it all balances out. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we're even in the top 5 of deaths.
No. But the message they have is that deaths, which are deaths from various things, are mislabelled COVID, and the undertakers and others are, whoever labels them, are pressured to put COVID on the report, and that puts up the numbers, and then they say there's more cases, and therefore we've got to have more masking, and if we don't have more masking, we're going to have a lockdown. So they're scaring people with a lockdown. So here we have a look. Bosses tell PM, act now to avoid tougher curbs. So, so they're trying to say, well, kids who want to have a party can't have a party unless they've got a vax passport or
I mean, it's the
coercion.
It's the coercion.
It's coercion. And this is totally undemocratic, and we are opposed to that. So are they going to do it, was your question. I think perhaps they won't have a full lockdown. They might, about 50-50, I'd say that. But more likely they'll try little lockdowns in some areas, claim this is so bad here, and then kind of separate people into lockdown and not lockdown, more restrictions, more use of passporting, and then, you've got to be, jab passport or passported with a test, that sort of stuff. All about control. And a lot of this is a mental thing. They can get people to comply, not because there's a passport, but because there's a threat of a passport. And think, let's do it now so we can go on holiday. But look, it's not going to work. Lots of things have been... People have got one jab, 2 jabs, 3 jabs, whatever. Where's it going to stop? You're going to have endless things which are, modifying your body, right, and making you controlled by the big pharmaceutical companies. That is what is happening. And this is the point we have to resist totally.
Well,
so, but will it happen? I was at many different things will happen, which will be a bit like lockdowns. And what we say is, if there's any big announcement, we take to the streets on that day and do, lots of things you can do, but you say no to any specific lockdowns, and we are in a lot of areas setting up what we call stay open unions. This is the shops and businesses.
Let me just put that up on the screen.
The shops and businesses in any area if they're going to be threatened by a new lockdown, getting together and agreeing that they're not going to lock down, and they will support each other. And that's shops, businesses, local people, and legal advice. And the sheer numbers will make it so that.
I think you have created a hell of a movement, and obviously you want it does. And what can I say? It's a beautiful thing when you see the amount of agreement. Last night we had a dinner here, which some of you can find on, if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see actually some of the speeches that were given, and we had just a most fantastic energy here at Camelot.
We did, yes. And point is, it's across the board, you see. I mean, you've got to leave, it's not one political party or another. That is nonsense now. Within each political party, we have them being manipulated and ruled by mega corporations. The issue is accountability and democratic, advancement of society and people or mega corporation, new world order diktats. That is what we've got to actually stop. We're not begging the government to stop, we've got to stop them doing it. And that's why I talk about quite openly action on the streets in whatever way is needed to win.
Yeah, and you know, I also think, Piers, you know, for those of us that are campaigning, I think it's very important to do things that are enjoyable too.
Yes.
And get out and have some fun.
Absolutely.
And have some fun with this, because we've got to be, Nigel always says, we've got to be happy campaigners. You know, we've got to be happy in our purposes and goals. And, you know, whenever I've seen you, whenever you've been here, you're always cheerful, you're always positive.
Well, indeed, yeah.
You know, we talk about some subjects we agree on, some subjects we completely disagree on. But you know what? This is what democracy is, isn't it?
Exactly.
And so
you've got to have the disagreements before you can have agreements. But of course, you know, the other side, they don't countenance any discussion. You know, so much goes on the mainstream, on the main social media that where things are cut off. Now, you know, when I speak in meetings, we offer the megaphone to other people. We do that and we see what they say, and then discuss. And they ask, you know. Most people ask fair questions. Some people ask completely ridiculous questions. They get the megaphone, scream, and then run away because, you know. But a lot of people, they come from fear. You see, they're frightened that they've done something to themselves or accepted something being done to their bodies, which might have been wrong, and that is scaring them. And what we say does scare them. That is true. But you know, their fear deep down means, well, actually, maybe we were right. But, you know, people who are going to get ill because of measures taken, we have to help them. And there are things that can be done.
There are things that can be done, and there's many.
Ivermectin, for example. Well, we didn't list the possibilities because I'm not a medic, but, you know, come on to stopnewnormal.net, various advice things in there, but come on there and see what's listed and what you can
I mean, to be fair, we're a bit limited about what we can say on these public Facebook platforms. But what we can say is we have a Telegram channel, Camelot TV Network, Herald's Hub, we call it, because we consider you all to be heralds or knights of the round table of truth here. And you can go on there, and that's where you'll get the real meat and potatoes. And then you can also go to your website, which is what?
Well, lettheuklive.com, stopnewnormal.net, and their workers' sister organisation, and weatheraction.com to download this for example,
incredible
and
document
get forecasts.
And for those of you that have got any questions about whether or not climate change is man-made or not, and whether or not the government's policy on climate change is correct or not, you know, do download that booklet, because it really will answer your questions. And when you run into one of these climate change activists, well, Amanda Jane Eliash has just said something here.
Contacts on the bottom where you can come back with a question.
Let me just put that on the screen. There you go.
Well, you're on the front or the back? That's the the contacts on the bottom. Yeah,
there's it on the bottom. I don't see
them.
There it is.
CorbynPiers@gmail.com, for example.
So you can even write to Piers.
You can. Yeah.
See, and then you've got this here. That's the document. There's a little website there. And Amanda Jane Eliash says, love the round table of truth. Well, you are part of the round table of truth. You're just not here often enough, Amanda. You need to come down and bring those 2 whippets of yours. Did you get a second whippet? No. So, as I say, the big news today is the launch of this SPAC in New York, DWAC, Digital World Acquisition Corp, which is the holding company that owns Truth Social, which is Donald Trump's new free speech platform. We're both excited that Donald Trump is going to become the first trillionaire.
Absolutely, because it can open the door to actually changing the situation whereby people are prevented from free speech across the world. We're being crushed. We want to move back this attack.
We've got to restore free speech.
We've got to restore free speech.
And for those American friends of mine, don't think that this is just an American play. This is far more important for the world. Still in America, you have more free speech than we have here. The level of censorship in the UK is far, far worse. in relative terms, I think we're at about 1933 Germany. And it really did start in by small little drip. No, they can't go to this shop. They're not allowed to go to that shop. And so I think the greatest thing that we can do, and to be honest with you, I have many Jewish friends who have been way too tolerant of the censorship.
Yeah.
And I can't believe the degree to which Israel, for instance, is having the segregation. I think this is a very tricky thing.
Yeah, passporting it's new segregationism.
It is new segregationism, and this is how things creep up. And so, I know that you are a great lover of freedom. I know that you are somebody who is completely against any form of intolerance of any type of a group, and by us all getting behind this free speech network, this is long overdue. Long overdue. It is so important. So, do you have a final message for your followers out there, the people that love you?
So look, prepare what to do if there's a big announcement about any more sort of lockdowns. And the most important thing is set up these stay open unions in your area and think about what are you going to do on the day of any local or national lockdowns. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go and demonstrate? Who are you going to do? And make them workable. And also think about the issues of food and energy crisis, which has again been imposed upon us, and that is artificial. I mean, there's stacks of food containers and other containers at the ports. All that is deliberate. I mean, we have to work somehow with the workers, drivers, trade unions involved to just move that stuff.
And that's interesting.
If Boris says can't, it's got to stay there, why has it got to stay there? Because some NHS app says you've got to stay there. Look, that's bullshit. It's nonsense. Those lorries or those containers have to be put on lorries and taken into the cities. Now, people listening, if you know anybody involved in this, think about it. So, my message is let's be practical on how we're going to win. Take to the streets on any day that Boris announces, and of course, above all, think about the slogan: resist, defy, do not comply.
Yeah, I mean, what did you make of that fuel?
Again, it was a game because, maybe to an extent it was the fuel companies flexing their muscles because so far lots of money's been made by the big pharmaceutical companies, but the energy companies are just kind of sometimes they've been losing money because the economy's been crashed. So it was like a story. So they tell everybody, be careful, there's going to be a crisis, and then don't go and rush buy petrol. So everybody goes to rush buy petrol exactly because they're frightened that other people are going to rush buy petrol. So then, of course, you've got these people lining up at the pumps, and then they put up prices. I mean, coming back here was a place we had to pay £1.52.
A gallon?
Yeah.
A litre?
Yeah, £1.52. But in London when we left, it was £1.40. So what's going on? Yeah, that was a garage where obviously they realised because of the confusion they can make a buck. Now that's a substantial increase.
Very large, isn't it?
And the oil companies are laughing, but it's artificially created. Look, there's no need for shortages of oil and petrol because they can just mine more of this stuff. They pretend there's a shortage or whatever. Don't do it.
Well, Camelot Castle's position is that we are going to remain open and we are not going to get into any of the prejudices.
Fantastic.
And we welcome and we prefer, this is our preference, people who have not been affected in any way by the current protocols. Let's just call it that way.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get into any medical details, but
just
everybody.
defiance of the protocols. You know.
Everybody.
And the coercion. Don't be coerced.
Don't be coerced.
You have rights. You've got rights over your mind and body.
Good. Well, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure President Trump will be delighted to hear that he has the
Well,
support.
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've got to build the broadest movement we've ever seen. So look, don't worry if somebody you don't like is saying the same thing as you. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean they're wrong. It means that you are saying the same thing as them, which is good. It's not bad. A massive united front movement is what we're building, and we're going to stick with it until we win.
Yeah. And the purpose, you know, the reason we bought Camelot Castle in 1999 was to have a place where people that agree on the basic that life should be free, that abilities and beauty and all the good things in life, and that like-minded people could come here. What we didn't want to create is one more hotel for the super rich, because really, you know what they do? They go around to these places and they whisper to each other, and they sort of, you know, they're so boring. Here, everybody talks to each other. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I have noticed that.
Everybody talks to each other. But anyway, lovely to have you here, and thanks so much, Piers.
Well, thank you very much. It's brilliant.
It's been fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.